Okay. Oh, hi. I understand that we have seen a small video. I mean, we didn't get to see it here, but anyway, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for the organizers to bring us all together here today to discuss the experience, the evolution of the concessions in Brazil over the last 10 years, and also talk a little bit more about the situation today that we are facing with the collapse of traffic, the recovery, the uncertainty of the new Omicron variant. And to do so, we have an exceptionally very knowledgeable persons, not own personal development in the airport industry, but because also they have participated actively in Brazil. As you know, Brazil is probably the only country in the world where all major airport operators are present, which is very interesting, and it brings, of course, a wealth of knowledge to the country. We have with us today Mr. Daniel Quechibachian, who is the CEO at Aeropuertos Argentina 2000. Aeropuertos Argentina 2000 is owned by Corporación América, and Corporación América is a company with a very vast presence in Latin America. Actually, it's the largest airport operator in the world by number of airports, and Daniel was fundamental in the presence of Corporación América in Brazil. I can hear someone actually speaking, but anyway, I'll continue. We have Eugene Gan from Changi Airports. As you know, Changi is a very well-respected airport company that has presence around the world as well. Very well known for the fantastic Changi Airport. And also, Eugene has been involved in the board of their airports in Brazil, in particular, of course, Rio Galeão. Finally, last but not least, is Daniel Bircher, who is from Zurich Airports. Zurich also a very active airport operator around the world, particularly in Brazil and in India. And Daniel has actually been working, I think, as CEO or director at Confins, Belo Horizonte in Brazil. So as I say, we have a very, very distinguished panel, and we want to actually run it in an informal way, basically kicking, questions to each other. But to begin with, we will actually provide each of them around 10 minutes or so time for them to actually, explain their experience in Brazil. But before that, I was actually going to forget. Before that, we are going to share the screen, and I would ask the organizers to allow me to share the screen. It says that it's been disabled. Can you actually allow me to share the screen? If not, it's not a problem. We actually can get started with Daniel Quechibachian, and meanwhile, the organizers can actually let me share the screen. Basically, what I wanted to show you is the evolution of traffic in Latin America. But anyway, we will wait for that later on. Daniel Quechibachian, please go ahead and share with us your thoughts about the experience over the last 10 years in Brazil. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rafa. I will switch to Portuguese. Vamos mudar para o português, que temos uma audiência grande lá.
I would like to speak in Portuguese. It's been a long time that I don't speak in Portuguese, but I believe that you will understand. And today, that's commemoration of the first 10 years of concession. I was when we first started with the first airport in Natal in 2011, in 2012 in Viracopos, Guarulhos, which was a great process, and I don't believe it's been already 10 years. In these years up to now, it's been a lot of learnings, and we see some new rounds that with people that are participating today. That was possible with people from Career, ASAC, ANAC, Infaero, which even today is following our concessions. And I see that's very important to have professionals with career in the lead of the industry, which is a complicated industry to learn each year. And now with the current minister that has worked from a lot of years learning together, is allowing time to improve things and the processes. And I would like to congratulate all the team for this learning process. And going back to 2012, I remember that I was going to the Brazilian companies to invest in the airports, making promises that would like to change along with Infraero the reality of the airports, and they didn't believe us. And today, just the fact of walking around in the airports and seeing how the industry is there and is earning the results in the infrastructure is very grateful. We see all these improvements in technology in all the airports, specifically talking about Brasilia, in airports that we have invested a lot. And with the infrastructure that we have there, we see many connections and more tourism, more economy, more employments. And this work together is providing all the results that we see today. And talking about 2020, 2021, we have been in 20 months that have been very complicated. Some countries have been closed and other almost closed, which has been complicated. And today is almost a miracle to be here talking here with the job we have done together, which was not a miracle, but it's a work that has been carried out together, each one in his situation, to provide these results. We have seen the exchange of ideas among the countries. We've seen what some countries were doing, and we have learned among ourselves what we could do to provide solutions for these problems. We were looking for not only throwing the trash everything that we have done in the past 10 years, but to improve our processes. When we joined the pandemic, we looked for three things. The first was sustainability in the long term and to maintain the employments. And today we are here very satisfied because we took several actions to keep standing, which actions were very effective and helped us to think of the future. And after, the second step was to look for opportunities, and here was not an exception. And in these opportunities, what we did was to invest and to remake the airport lane that was very difficult to do, because it's very difficult to close the airport for 3 months, and today we did it, and it's a very important lane for our region. We can land and take off without limit of capability. And this makes Buenos Aires to be a very important airport for the region, and we are taking advantage of it. And Rafael was also talking about the digitalization, which was fundamental. And we see successes that would happen in 10 years are happening right now. And we need to prepare the airports for this reality in the digital world. And also agility. In this pandemic, we have implemented the agile framework to get faster results, which is fundamental. And last of all, and not less important, to support the communities in which we operate, all the vaccines and all the donations that we did, and the agreements with the Red Cross that we also cared to provide better results for Latin America. And in the post-pandemic, I would separate into two sectors. First, the domestic sector, that we see a very good performance in Brazil, United States, and Ecuador, in Argentina, which is a very good information because we see a great desire to travel. We see domestic flights being growing, and we see also that many myths are just dying because we see the retaking of this traffic. And we see also that we have seen higher prices in the regions, but we also see a greater desire to travel. And as far as the international goal, we see that it's a little slower. We have restrictions, it's still falling the rate of the growth, but it's important also to speed up the international connection. And I believe that the same thing is going to happen with the connectivity what happens with WhatsApp when it falls. When I think that everything is going to turn out like with the digital connections. After the pandemic, we think that we would not have some growth, but I think that is going to grow after the pandemic because we see that there is importance in the borders and see people that are working in different places and working as digital nomads, and they are looking for solutions in traffic, in air traffic, because they need to go and travel to work. And we have an important role in it because we are connecting cultures, connecting businesses. So we gotta have exponential growth for international travels after the post-pandemic. And we have a revolution in the international logistics. So this is gonna happen also in the airports, which will be a exponential focus for growth in the regions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much, Daniel Cachivachian. I don't know if the organizers have managed to allow me to share the screen. Yes, they have. So before I go on to Eugene, basically, just very quickly, if you allow me, Eugene, this is what I wanted to share, was basically the situation in Latin America right now. Overall, in Latin America, traffic is down by 33% as compared to 2019. This is the entire region, in the entire Latin American region. And actually on the right, I'm showing you the numbers for other parts of the world. You know, it is obviously it's not good news, but considering everything, Latin America is not being as highly impacted as other parts of the world. So right after North America, Latin America is, you know, shares the lowest reduction in traffic. Now, of course, this is for the entire region. If we actually exclude Brazil and Mexico, we see that the situation is a bit more dire. And we are actually looking at 40% reduction in the month in October 2021 as compared to 2019. And if we look at Mexico, actually we can see that right now in October the reduction was only 3%. This actually sends a very clear message, okay, which maybe we can discuss later on, which is that whenever there are no restrictions, whenever there are no impositions, of course, traffic is recovering much faster. And as you probably know, Mexico is the only country in the world that we are aware of that never imposed any restrictions. It was always open and without the need to actually show any type of PCR test or anything like that. In Brazil, the situation is a bit more difficult than in Mexico, as you know, 38% down. And in the Caribbean, which is another area that we actually cover here, the situation actually is doing quite well. This is actually mainly driven, of course, by San Juan de Puerto Rico. But if we take out San Juan, actually in Dominican Republic, the things are actually looking at very well. And just finally, to illustrate a city, an airport that is not in our region, but is almost unofficially the capital of Latin America, which is Miami, which happens to be actually a member of our organization in Latin America. This is actually a very good reflection of what Daniel was saying. International traffic is down, domestic traffic is up, obviously, because it's easier to move within the countries. Basically, I just wanted to illustrate with these figures the situation right now, and I will stop sharing the screen right now, and we'll get back to, let me see if I can actually stop sharing the screen. Here we are. Stop share, and I will pass on the word to Eugene, whom, as I said, is based in Changi. You're in Singapore right now, Eugene, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Rafael. Good morning and good afternoon or good evening to all ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are. I'm from Changi, Singapore, based in Singapore. Just to give a brief introduction of ourselves. Other than operating Changi Airport in Singapore, we are operating also a portfolio of 9 airports across 6 countries. And the countries include, of course, Brazil, Russia, China, India, Japan, and the Philippines. So today I would like to share more about our experiences in Brazil. It is a country that Changi has been associated with for the last 10 years, since 2011 to now, 2021. We have been operating in Galeão Airport in Rio for the last 8 years, since 2013, and it has been a very interesting experience, for us so far. Of course, the last 2 years of the COVID pandemic has been very challenging for us, but I must say that with the government proactive intervention and with the effort that we have put in, our local management team has put up a very good effort, to keep the airport in a very operational ready state during this challenging period. So one of the things maybe I want to share with the audience today is some of our observations of what would be some of the trends that we see going forward, especially after the pandemic. I think one of the things that we observe is that definitely the domestic travel segment is going to be more important for airport operators like ourselves, especially in the coming years when we are recovering from the pandemic. I think it goes without saying, it's very obvious to everyone that domestic travel has proven to be very resilient and has obviously recovered much faster than international travel due to a number of reasons, right? And some of these reasons are going to continue for a while, including in the Brazilian context. So some of these reasons, like border closures, health concerns, exchange rates, narrowing and shrinking travel budgets, technology advances like what we are doing now over Zoom, so on and so forth. So as a consequence, for a big country, with a large population like Brazil, the domestic capacity has recovered 85%, according to the latest numbers that I have in November 2021, this month, as compared to the pre-COVID November 2019 numbers. And in contrast, the international capacity in Brazil has only recovered 43% as compared to 2 years ago. So our growth forecast for our airport in Galeão is also reflecting a similar sentiment like this. So this phenomenon of domestic segment becoming even more important after the pandemic is also what we have observed in equally large countries with large populations across the world, like the countries that we have been operating in, large countries like China, like Russia. We have seen a similar development. In fact, for large countries like China and Russia, the domestic segment recovery has been the rebound has been so strong that it has already overtaken and surpassed the pre-COVID levels that they used to have. And this is, of course, due to the substitution effect that the international travel is a lot more restricted now, and domestic travel has become the substitutional travel pattern for many of these passengers. So I think the key message is that for airport operators like ourselves, we have to pay a lot more attention to our domestic travelers and try to increase, the average yield for these passengers by adjusting our airport's commercial offering, our commercial mix, and also adjusting our passenger service offerings as well. Now, a related point to this is that in the context of Brazil domestic travel, I think the low-cost carriers are also finally emerging on the scene, and will be able to open new domestic markets for those airports that can offer them the right operating and commercial conditions. Just to give you another statistic, the trips per capita in Brazil is only at about 0.5 as compared to the trips per capita in the US and Europe, which is ranging from 2 to 2.5. So there is plenty of room for growth in terms of domestic travel within Brazil, especially with a young population and a large population. But these low-cost carriers will only be able to stimulate the aviation growth in Brazil, if we can help bring down the cost structure for them, including labor costs, the fuel costs, taxes, as well as aeronautical tariffs. So I think in conclusion, just to wrap up my short summary here, I think we would have seen the worst behind us now, I think, for the pandemic. The recovery is on its way. It is a matter of time that the aviation market is going to recover back to the pre-pandemic levels. But of course, no one knows how long it would take. We hope that it would be faster rather than slower, but we are confident that the recovery will come. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Eugene. And indeed, I mean, you touch on a very important point, which is the potential of Brazil. I mean, just as you share those numbers, I mean, that's something that we could keep on telling everyone. And I presume that that is the reason why, even during the pandemic, Brazil was the only country that managed to actually, undergo through a process of concessions with the 6th round, and actually also the airports in the state of Sao Paulo. So that's very exciting. And I presume that that is one of the reasons. And yeah, as you say, we hope that we will recover very quickly, although we don't know exactly what's the impact of the new Omicron variant. Anyway, so thank you very much, Eugene. So finally, we'll go over to Daniel Bircher, who, as I said, is from Zurich Airport. They operate airports also around the world. And by the way, I must say one thing, Daniel. When I landed in Floripa, in your airport there, I mean, it was like stepping into Zurich. I mean, it was fantastic. I was quite amazed. Fantastic job you've done there. Go ahead, Daniel.
Thank you, Raphael. And there's not that much that is left for me, because Daniel and Eugene have really summarized it. Maybe just from my point of view, we've all come from an area of almost 10 years of unprecedented growth. So from 5.4 billion in 2010 to 9 billion passenger in 2019. So a very long, very solid growth. Obviously, different regions a bit stronger, others a bit less. And probably there have been 3 main drivers for this growth in our view. One is the increase in low-cost carriers. The second one, in our view, is the growth of the global middle class, the purchasing power, and larger segments of passengers traveling. And then last but not least, also a significant increase in global aircraft fleets and also airport infrastructure that has enabled this growth. Now, this has come to an abrupt halt in 2019, and there are different scenarios, obviously, how this is going to move ahead. And I will not talk about domestic and international. I fully agree with my colleagues on this. I think important will be that the international organizations continue to drive and push together to have harmonized and streamlined procedures to do immigration quarantine procedure. I think that has been the utmost problematic aspect of this whole COVID crisis that we've had. But we are quite clear in our understanding that the underlying macroeconomic factors have not substantially changed. And we also, in all our predictions, feel that the growth will come back. I would, as a second point, maybe quickly for those that are not aware of our involvement, we are since 2014 in Confira in Belo Horizonte, together with CCR as a partner. Then we have three 2017 Florianopolis that we took over 100%, 2019 Vitoria 100%, and Macaé as well in 2019. So, and we've had different experiences, and I think that is something which will lead me now to my third point. Brazil has seen a tremendous evolution in their concession framework. If I look back in the first round, we had maybe 7 main blocks and preconditions, from variable concession fee to yearly fixed concession fees to shorter terms to capital expenditures that were based on triggers of dates and not so much capacity, to FNAC taxes, infra-aero participation, and through a learning process and a very strong interaction between the government and the stakeholders, and we were not the first stakeholder to enter, but an early adopter. I think today the framework has matured to a state where, as an investor, you feel comfortable with upfront payments that de-risks the concessions, with very clear and long-term concessions that give you the opportunity to both adjust and adopt your infrastructure program with the demand. And I think that has been probably the most significant contribution to the success of this program, is that the government was able to shift according to the requirements. Obviously, there has been quite bullish proposals. Whether they will pay out in the end, I would say that we will see. But as my speakers before, we are convinced that Brazil is a large market, does not have too many alternatives on long distance travel, whereas other countries have that. So all the fundamentals for growth in Brazil and for the continuation of these privatization programs are there. And in that view, we are happy to celebrate these 10 years now, and we're looking forward to the next 10 years afterwards as an initial start to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And I think this is very interesting what you just said. I mean, we've seen this evolution of the concession models towards something that is much more, interesting for the potential investors. So, I mean, looking into the future, I mean, obviously, it's the big thing, the 7th round next year. I mean, I presume that all of you expect that to generate a lot of interest amongst international investors, not necessarily yourselves, but I mean, are you positive about that? Do you think that we can expect, a big fight there in the most positive way possible? What are your views on this? Anyone?
Maybe I can just give our view there. Obviously, it is interesting. I think the market will come back, maybe more. Our assumption is maybe more infrastructure and pension funds or funds than operators, because as the operators worldwide are still struggling with reduced passengers, I think strategic priorities may be more on, I wouldn't say so much survival, but reduction of debts, servicing the shareholders. But what is for us still an open point is, how does this cluster approach work out? We've just seen the award of clusters in the 6th round. However, the commercial success of these concessions has to be proven or shown in future, and we will only see then how difficult these will be. But definitely interesting assets.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Kechibachian, anything from you or Eugene?
Yes,
any thoughts about the future concessions?
I am agree with Daniel. I think that Brazil is always interesting. All the rounds were successful, so I don't see why this will not. Of course, maybe with the change on the competitors, because the airport operators, we are passing through the pandemic, but of course, the long term of Brazil is, we have a lot of enthusiasm there, so will be a great new round again.
Yes, I agree as well with my two fellow speakers. From what we see across the world, Brazil is one of the few countries that has been consistently rolling out its airport privatization program. And it has continued to do so, during the 2 years of the pandemic. And even during the pandemic, the privatizations for the airports have been quite successful as well. So this is something quite incredible and amazing, given the consistency as well as the determination to press on with the airport privatization program. So with the 7th round, given the high profile of the airports, I think it will be equally successful as well. Of course, the investors would then have to, like what Daniel mentioned, the investors would then have to make their own investment decisions around this cluster approach. Which is not just a single airport, but how do you then manage a cluster? But I believe the government has taken that into consideration in structuring the concessions. So we are all quite excited to look forward to how the 7th round will turn out.
Thank you, Eugene. You mentioned something before that I thought it was interesting, which is the importance, or the strengthening of the importance of the domestic passenger. Okay, as a result of the pandemic. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what that means for the airport operator, for the airports, for a generation of non-aeronautical revenue? I mean, in the past, of course, the duty-free, aspect, the international passenger was like, the main area of interest, from potential, maximization of those revenues. What would you say the airports will have to look into right now? Maybe the development of real estate opportunities, or what is in your mind that needs to perhaps be reconsidered?
I think what you mentioned about the commercial offerings is definitely one area that we have to be mindful about. In the past, it is quite easy to get carried away with duty-free type of shopping experience, so on and so forth. But with the international borders not opening as fast as we would like, as I mentioned, the more attention has to be given to the domestic offerings, right? Because that is going to be the large segment of the passengers that we have to be serving, especially in the foreseeable future. So maybe that has been not so much paid attention to in the past during the pre-pandemic years, but now we have to be more mindful of that. What are some of the offerings that is more well received and more popular with the domestic traveling segment? Other than that, I think other than just the passenger traffic, an associated topic that we have been observing during this pandemic years is actually the cargo side, of the business. what we have observed, and I'm sure my fellow speakers would agree with me as well, is that the cargo business has proven to be very resilient and very important to both airlines and airports during this pandemic. Just to give you an example, in our Galeão airport in Rio, the cargo business has represented 21%, of our revenues in 2019, which is during the pre-pandemic years. But during the 2 years of the pandemic, the cargo revenue share of the total revenue has doubled to 41%. So, this is a very important part of our business that has kept us going during these pandemic years. So it is not just resilient, even in the rise in the air freight rates. But of course, if we investigate further, there are short-term reasons why there are certain factors that is driving this growth in the cargo. Of course, the production ramp-ups following some factory closures during the peak of the pandemic, and the disrupted supply chain was one of the short-term drivers. Some of the large cargo volumes are related to the shipment of pandemic-related products like vaccination, like the vaccine shipments, and also due to the sea freight capacity problems, right, caused by port closures. That also gave rise to the rise of air cargo. But despite all these short-term measures, I think the air cargo resilience is not something that is happening just during the pandemic. In fact, it is here to stay. Especially, the e-commerce growth is going to be here to stay as well. So if I were to just quote some numbers, the global e-commerce logistic market actually grew 27.3% last year in 2020, and it's expected to reach a compounded annual growth of more than 8%, right, by 2025. So in Brazil, actually the percentage of the online retail sales has reached 11%, right, in 2020, and it's expected to grow to 20% by 2024. So this actually, we see this cargo segment of the airport business is going to be very important, for airport operators beyond just the domestic segment, the domestic passenger segment that I was talking about. So during the pre-pandemic years, I think the cargo side of airport operators would typically focus a lot of attention on the passenger side of the business, but now I think the pandemic has also made us realize that cargo is equally important as well. So just want to share my experience in Brazil.
Thank you very much, Eugene. That's very, very interesting. I mean, I might as well ask Daniel Bircher about this as well. This change of the business model. And you guys in Zurich, I mean, you just opened recently the Circle, the famous development on the land side. I mean, I understand it is fantastic. I cannot wait to go and take a look at that. I saw it a couple of years ago when it was being built. I mean, is that part of this transformation of the business model? This Circle is an example of that, and what are your views on what Eugene just said?
Yeah, thank you. I would fully agree with Eugene on the focus there. I think that not the difficulties, but the challenges would be then from an airport operator's point of view, how to transform this also in sustainable revenues. Previously, the main model of airports was to earn from the inefficiency of the cargo systems. The longer the cargo stays in the warehouse, the more you earn, and obviously that's not a philosophy that we should take forward. So if you find better models there, then it's good. But coming back to your question, it is indeed the case that Zurich, but more out of a necessity, because we have natural limitations here to grow our aviation business, we said a couple of years ago. So what else could the company do to grow? Because the shareholders expect increasing revenues despite limitations. And so we said we do two things. One is we use the land that we have at the airport to do real estate developments that are not totally, but more independent from the actual passenger volume. And the Circle is exactly such a result. And the other element is the international business. even though the international business is part of the overall demand and supply of air travel, but the risks are different. So currently we operate also in India, also a large domestic market, and they have different dynamics and different developments than an airport in the middle of Europe that is totally dependent on international or intercontinental traffic. So I agree that this diversification is probably for an airport operator a way forward. It's not in every case possible because of the geographical situation of the airport, the land available, but whenever possible. And just to give you a number, we are currently building an airport in India, greenfield, and our estimates or our business model is based on our revenues in the second part of the concession to be 85% non-aeronautical and 15% aeronautical. So that also shows the importance of the non-aeronautical revenue segment, which has to be tapped both internationally and domestically. And I think good experts are involved in developing this and following the market demands. And digitalization is one aspect, but also the product offering and the costing.
Fantastic. I mean, that is amazing, that number that you just quoted. I mean, that's great. Daniel Kechibachian, I mean, yes. You guys operate a network of airports in Argentina. Most of the international traffic, I don't know, I'm just guessing, over 90% happens at Ezeiza, the main airport in Buenos Aires. So what is happening in the regional airports, those airports that are, you know, looking at mainly domestic traffic? I mean, what are your expectations there?
Great. First, I want to add on cargo that I am agree with both. We are on an international logistic revolution. On the pandemic, it was 95% of our incomes because we don't have any passengers. So the cargo maintain the company and we can pay the salaries with cargo. So that was amazing for us. And as Eugene was saying, now is part of the heart of our strategy. Not only because of that, but also because this revolution. We are working on how to add value to the supply chain, not only being the receptor of the cargo international, but also to introduce our expertise in this chain of logistics, because we are very important. As you said, Rafa, we have 35 airports in Argentina, and we are working a lot to introduce our expertise in the last mile, because that will be the next conversation in cargo. Today it is, but it will be growing the last mile in cargo. As we have airports in all the country, it is very helpful for the cargo operators, our participation. So related to that, we are seeing this with a lot of enthusiasm because we see a big business there. And then discussing about international and domestic flight, I think it will depend a lot on the country. Of course, we have airports in Uruguay that we don't have much domestic flights, and everyone is thinking on traveling international. And for us in Argentina, the same. The Argentinian people like to visit Argentina, but also like to visit the world. So maybe I am agree that in 2022 will be the domestic very important as it is now. Now, by the end of the year, we see a lot of bookings on domestic flight and not much to international. But we think and we understand it is something for this moment, and then we will be recovering the previous situation. Because as I told before, the world is more connected, the digital situation, people working and living in different countries, that is great for the globalization, and for the international passenger is some part very important of the idea of travel to other countries, you know, to visit other culture and to being connected. That is fundamental. So we don't see much changes on that.
Thank you, Daniel. So I'll take the opportunity. You mentioned Uruguay, Montevideo. You run the airports there in Uruguay. And by the way, congratulations, because you just actually got an extension and you actually were thrown in 6 more airports, relatively small, but 6 more airports there. I am fascinated by the role that Montevideo is playing with the introduction of digital technologies. I mean, you guys are, I think that you are the leader in Latin America for sure. I mean, I am amazed about the fact that as a European, you can enter Uruguay without having to talk to an immigration officer. That is amazing, and that is actually my recommendation to many islands in the Caribbean. You know, to position yourself in a competitive way to implement that. What are your views about the digital transformation that we are seeing? Because I see two aspects here. I mean, one is the more efficient, you know, aspect of technology. Actually, three: the efficiency that technologies bring, reduction of costs, operating costs, and so on. Of course, in terms of the pandemic, you know, the facial recognition, the touchless, and all that, that is absolutely important. And finally, and I think that probably the most exciting as a user, you know, as a flyer, is the ease of navigation through the airport. Okay, the passengers love it. You know, you reduce queues. What are your views about this? I mean, are we really now seeing that final transformation as a result of the pandemic?
Yes, sure. I think that today is not an option not to be digital. Montevideo, as you said, is our laboratory. So everything we start in Montevideo because it's prepared for this. And the passenger is asking to this. The passenger doesn't want papers, doesn't want queues. So, and now that we need to have a seamless travel, so more fast, and we say that maybe we compete with Zoom. I don't think so. But if you want to compete with this, you don't need to have queues at the airport. Seems to be a very smooth place and to have a lot of technology. So because of that, we take advantage here in the pandemic to do a lot of partnership with a lot of international technology companies. And we are starting now in the next month, introducing these new technologies in all of our airports, not only Montevideo. But I think that is not an option and is part of our due to introduce technology for all the passengers.
Fantastic. Eugene, Daniel Bircher, any ideas, any comments on this transformation that we are living? And of course, you guys in Singapore, I mean, you know, you guys are at the leading edge of the, you know, development of technologies, and you are very keen, of course, in Asia and in Switzerland also. I mean, you guys are very much on the leading edge. Any thoughts on this?
I think, yeah, I agree with Daniel. I think technology, digitization is not an option. You know, it is a must that we have to go through, and it is the same that we are doing in Singapore as well. It is not just the usage of technology to make it a better experience in terms of the process or the passenger processing, but it is also how do we then use technology to enable you know, smart solutions as well as data analysis, giving rise to big data type of solutions to enhance shopping experiences. And you know, in Changi as well as with many other airports, you know, we do not run the retail outlets directly ourselves. We actually do it through an outsourcing. But how do we then use technology to create an environment that enhances the entire shopping experience? So in recent years during the pandemic, we actually pushed out new technologies like our own e-wallet program called Changi Pay that, you know, rivals the other e-wallet programs around the world. Hopefully we are able to gain some traction within the airport environment. We have our own iShop Changi type of shopping experience. Given the lack of international travel now, we have brought the entire experience online as well. So I think there are endless opportunities, you know, for technological and digitalization type of exploitation. It is really, you know, it's really up to one's imagination, you know, how much you want to exploit that.
Absolutely. Daniel from Zurich, any views on this?
Yes, I would say we had sort of a bit a rocky start. I mean, we had lots of discussions, and we said in the end, it cannot be a digitalization just for itself, but it has to follow a purpose. And so on, our strategy now is based on three pillars. We say, okay, what we want to provide is a seamless customer experience, because today what is an airport? An airport is a place where you bring people physically together. I mean, that's what our USP is, and will always be in future, that people will be there physically. So obviously they have to buy things there. How they buy it, whether they get the offer through digital media or seeing it there, that's a different thing. But it can be enhanced outside the airport. So we say, okay, that gap between the on-site and the digital experience should be seamless. The second one is then we said, okay, it can help and it should help to improve efficiency through intelligence processes and infrastructures. And then obviously as a third one, new products and business models can help. But I would like to add what Eugene said. One of the most important elements of this whole digitalization is the number and the amount of data. And if we manage in airports to become again more masters of our own data and use in the whole ecosystem with the same data warehouse, the same database, share it, sell it, make sure that the interfaces are there, we have absolutely fantastic opportunities. And we cannot forget also other industry players that already are in this business, like the Amazons and the Googles. And so our debate is more going on, how do we integrate them? And we've just done a recent release as the first airport to have Google Maps live view. So we use Google Maps, we don't develop our own maps, and you can have a live view indicating where the shops are, where passenger facilities are, because we believe in this partnership. Google is much better in providing maps, but we are better in providing detailed information about the facilities in the airport. So that the discussions are going on, and definitely I would agree with my colleagues, this is the way ahead, and it's important for the airports to have the foot in there and also generate revenues out of this.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. And I would like to say one thing. In Latin America, when it comes to data sharing, information and so on, we may actually be doing lots of things of installing hardware, for facial recognition or what have you, but that very important element is still missing. I mean, I can still see many airports, filling in forms by hand, the delay in actually sharing, for example, passenger traffic. I mean, it's quite amazing that, you have to wait for 2 months for that information to arrive. I mean, that is totally unacceptable in the 21st century. We only have 5 minutes more to go. And one thing that I wanted to hear your views on the environment. I mean, that's the other big hot topic that we have in front of us. Once again, in Latin America, we have some world leaders, like, for example, Galapagos Airport is a carbon neutral airport run by our friends from Corporación América. Your views, Daniel Bircher, Eugene, and Daniel Kechibachian on this before we just close the session. Thank you.
Yeah, very, very briefly. I mean, we discussed in the time before the question of what is going to happen to business travel. So obviously, part of the whole change is driven by cost reduction, but part of it is driven by the awareness of the impacts of air travel on this planet. And I think airports have done a great job, and we are in line with everyone that we should do what we can. So for our new airport in India, we want to operate as a net zero airport right from the beginning. So we will implement that. But my key message here is a different one. My key message would be, people will always have the urge to travel. This will continue. This has been here for the last 2000 years. What we need to do as an industry, and we have to strive for that, is to minimize the environmental effect of travel. And that can only be done by using synthetic aviation fuel. It's mainly in the domain of the airlines. We can contribute to it. We can create the infrastructure so that the impact is reduced, and not discuss about how to substitute short-term travel by train instead of flying. We feel that's the wrong approach, but we must make sure that the impact is minimalized there in this view. So that's what we're working for. That's where we're contributing in all our endeavors.
Eugene, in a couple of minutes, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, totally agree with my colleague, Daniel. Actually, in terms of the environmental impact, airport players actually contribute to a lesser impact as compared to other players like the airlines within the aviation ecosystem. But nonetheless, I think we are still committed to do our part for the environment. Whichever small contribution that we are doing in terms of ensuring not just environmental friendliness, but also sustainability, I think that is part of our long-term aim that we want to go. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Eugene. And Daniel Quechivachan, your thoughts on this?
Yes. Thank you. No, I am totally agree. We discussed on this in ASI last week in Cancun. It's part of the strategy of all the airports today. Again, it's not an option, the environmental. And I agree with Daniel that we need to minimize the impact. That is our job. We are doing a lot of work in all of our airports. Of course, Galapagos is leading this, but we are doing a lot of work. We have a report we do every year about what things we are doing on this, and it's on our webpage, then you can consult. And we need to work together on this because it's something that the passenger will ask for us and the new generation will ask more. So that is our job to do, and we need to do it, of course.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So the only thing left to do here is to thank all the panelists, Eugene Gan from Changi, Daniel Bircher from Zurich, Daniel Quechivachan from Corporación América Aeropuertos Argentina 2000. And really, I mean, I think that we leave a very good sensation, very good feelings in that, you know, the future looks very good for Brazil, great potential there, the possibility of actually focusing, the need to focus on other aspects of the business, maybe a change of paradigm, going towards paying more attention to domestic cargo, but overall a very positive feeling about what the future holds for Brazil. So with that, I thank the organizers very much. Thank you, Diogo, very much, and everyone else. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I believe we are already offline.
Okay.
I entered just to thank you all and congratulate you for the panel. I was listening here, but I am amazed the great quality and the good exchange of information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diogo. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Obrigado, Diogo.
Well, good to see you. Bye
Ciao.
bye. Daniel, good to see you.